Most people go looking for answers and end up with a pile of them, and none of them fit together. You have probably been there. Something happens in your life, something that forces you to actually ask the big questions. Not as a hobby, not as an intellectual exercise, for real. And you start looking. Maybe you try religion, there's something there, a sense that life has a meaning, and there's more going on than what you can see. But at some point, it asks you to stop thinking. You just have to believe, and you can't quite do that. So you look the other way science, research, facts, and there's something there too clarity, rigor, a way of understanding the world that doesn't ask you to switch off your brain. But it's cold. It leaves out everything that actually matters to you consciousness, love, meaning, why any of this is happening at all. Neither holds together. And that is not your fault, and it's not religion's fault, and it's not the research's fault. Sometimes life forces you to ask the big questions. This channel explores a world picture where the answers actually hold together. A Danish thinker named Martinus spent his life mapping what he called an eternal world picture, a complete description of reality that has always been there, waiting to be seen. And one of the first things he described was exactly this problem why the answers don't hold together, why we are stuck. He said humanity is currently divided into two broad groups. The first group is the believers. These are people who have the general instinct for something beyond the physical, a felt sense that life has a depth, that there's something behind it all. Martinus says this isn't naivety, it's actually a real capacity, a talent, an awareness that is developed over a very long time. But it's fuzzy. It's not grounded in knowledge. You feel something, it's true, but you cannot quite say what it is or why. You just feel it. The second group are the materialists, literally the non believers. These are people whose intelligence has sharpened to a point where they need facts. They need to actually know. And the first thing you can know with certainty is the physical world, what you can measure, test, and repeat. So they go there, and many of them go so far in that direction that they conclude that this is all there is. Consciousness is a product of the brain, meaning is something we make up, the universe is fundamentally a dead matter. Both of these positions are genuine. Both are responding to something real, but they can't talk to each other. The believer thinks materialist has lost something essential. The materialist thinks the believer is avoiding reality. And between them, the answers go nowhere. What Martinus says, and this is the key, is that this conflict is not permanent. It's a stage we're in. We're in the middle of it, and there's a way out of it. In Livets bog, which is Danish for the Book of Life, Martinus describes a third category. He calls them the knowledge ones, de vidne. Not people who believe more intensely, not people who have smarter materialistic arguments, but people who actually know, who have moved past both position, both religion and the materialistic state, into something that includes and completes them both. And here's what that means. The believer's instinct is pointing at something real, that there's something beyond the physical. Consciousness isn't produced by the brain. Martinus says it's the other way around. The mental, the spiritual side of existence comes first. Matter is a kind of condensed energy that consciousness works through. The believers is right, there's more going on. They just don't have the knowledge to describe it yet. The materialist hunger for fact is also pointing at something real. We do need to actually know. Vague feelings are not enough. The demand for logic, for evidence, for something you can follow step by step, that's a genuine developmental achievement. The materialist is right that you shouldn't just believe things. They just apply that rigor only to the physical half of reality. The third position takes both seriously. It says, yes, there is a spiritual dimension to existence, and it can be described, mapped, and understood. We can know about it. Not as a matter of faith, but as a matter of knowledge. Not because someone told you to believe it, but because you can follow the logic yourself and see that it holds. This is what Martinus described: a world picture where the spiritual and the physical aren't opposites. They are two aspects of the same reality, where consciousness isn't an anomaly that science can't explain, it's the foundation everything else rests on. Where the answers from religion and the answers from science aren't contradictions. They're both partial views of something larger. And this is what he meant by calling his work the Third Testament. Not replacing the first two, the Old Testament and the New one, but completing them. He was explicit about this. Christ himself, Martinus wrote, knew that the Gospels wouldn't be enough forever. People would eventually need something more. Not more faith, but more understanding. A different kind of help. And as Martinus puts it in his lectures, people today need completely different help for their logical thinking. Essentially, we need to understand the physical world, which we understand through the physical science. We also got that fairly well thought out. But we also need to understand the spiritual side of things. And we can have a science about that as well. And that is what Martinus provides. So one of the central symbols in Martinus' work, symbol 13, the eternal world picture, shows the whole journey. It's a circular diagram. At the top here, we have the light side of our eternal life. And at the bottom here, we have the dark side of it. And moving through it, always a current development is happening. We go through the mineral kingdom, we go through the plant kingdom, and we go through the animal kingdom. And after that, we go through a kingdom called the real human kingdom. We go beyond that to the higher spiritual worlds, and we come back again. Every living being is somewhere in this journey. None of it is random. It all has a direction. What strikes people when they see it for the first time is how much it includes. The Bible describes one arc of one circle from the darkness of the animal kingdom towards the light of the true human kingdom. Science describes the measurable surface of that same arc. Neither is wrong. Both are looking at the same thing from different angles with different instrument or different perceptions. As Martinus wrote about the symbol, we see that there is a plan and intention. Everything is logical built up. And this is exactly the point. The reason answers don't hold together, the reason why religion and science seems to contradict each other, is that each of them is describing part of reality that they don't have the full picture of. Put the full picture on the table and the contradictions dissolve. The suffering makes sense, the evolution makes sense, the happiness makes sense. Not as separate topics, but as part of one thing. Everything belongs together. That's what answers that hold together actually looks like. Not a feeling, not a belief, a picture of reality that is large enough to include everything and coherent enough that once you see it, how the pieces fit, you cannot really unsee it. I will go over this symbol in more details in upcoming videos, so stick around, subscribe, tag along, and let's have the last part of the video here. We live in a time when the old answers aren't working and people kind of know it. You can feel it everywhere. The religious framework that held communities together for centuries are losing their grip. Not because people have stopped asking the questions, but because the answers no longer satisfies the intelligence that has developed in us. And the materialistic alternative, the idea that consciousness is kind of an accident or something random, that meaning is something we project onto a fundamental indifferent universe, that doesn't satisfy either. Not really. Martinus saw this coming. He wrote about it a century ago. He said that this period of conflict and confusion, this sense that nothing holds together, was not a sign that reality had no answers. It was a sign that humanity was ready for a new kind of knowing. Ready, finally, you can say, for a world picture large enough to hold everything. This is that world picture, not something you need to believe, something you can follow step by step and see whether it holds. And the place to start, the clearest demonstration of the logic that runs through all of it, is the spiral circle. The map of the whole journey, where we come from, where we're going, and why the path looks exactly the way it does. That is the next video. So thanks for watching. And if you find this video valuable, please give it a like. And for further information about this world picture, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.